Hello, everyone. It's Nihal from the Soccer Brothers here. Just want to let you know that we had a whole episode beyond Mauricio Pochettino's hire that we recorded, but unfortunately, the file got corrupted, so we'll just be talking about Mauricio Pochettino coming back as the U.S. men's national team head coach today. If we allude to anything else in this podcast, we are going to re-record and bring you some more transfer news and talk about the drama going on at FIFA. Enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to Soccer Brothers. I'm Nihal Qatar. As always, I'm joined by my brother Sahil. Sahil, how was Lollapalooza, man?
It was fun. Saw Clips, Geese, Charlie XCX, Mother. Saw some cool artists. Obviously, it was like a bit hectic at times getting in and getting out, but the weather wasn't always the greatest either. But it didn't rain as much as I thought it was going to, so it was nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. Obviously, you live in Chicago, so I'm sure it was a crazy weekend. It looked like everyone I followed on Instagram that lives in Chicago was there, so that's always pretty cool to see.
My question is, how come I have to wait till I hop on a podcast for you to ask me a question like this?
Well, I think part of the dilemma with podcasting is that a lot of times you want to, you save good conversation topics for the podcast to the detriment of your relationships with people. And I think, it's like when I used to be a semi-successful Twitch streamer, I wouldn't play video games because it'd be like, oh, I have to save this for the stream. And it just ended up making my entire gaming experience worse. So
yeah, but for some reason you still do that even though you don't stream anymore.
Okay, well that's a completely different topic. We got a lot of soccer related stuff to get to today. So why don't we get into that? Also, do want to apologize real quickly about our audio last week. We do have it fixed. It turns out Sahil had his mic faced the wrong way, so that's why he sounded
very common mistake in the business.
Is it? I mean, this is why this works better when we're in the same room and not, like the first podcast, because I can actually check on that stuff. But anyway, we've done testing. He sent over an audio file before just to make sure everything was all good. So we should be good going forward and into the future. But it is transfer season. Last time we said we would talk about transfers on the previous podcast. We did not get to it because we spent a lot of time talking about Everton and Roma and our fandom there, and of course the FIFA scandal that is currently ongoing. Today we'll be talking about some transfers. Before that, though, we have an update to the FIFA scandal. But before that, even, some huge news broke today on Monday, August 3rd. Mauricio Pochettino has decided to return as the U.S. men's national team coach through the 2030 World Cup. Pochettino was obviously hired 2 years ago after the U.S. crashed out at the Copa America. And, he started off a little bit shaky, but the team started to play really well until they had a disastrous showing in the round of 16 against Belgium at this previous World Cup. But Pochettino is coming back, and now he and his staff will actually have more influence on the program, where they will be more involved with the U17s, U18s, U20, and the Olympic team, which I think is good. You always kind of want that continuity and stability throughout. What was your reaction when you saw the news this morning?
I guess not surprised, just because of the reporting that we got from The Athletic last week and kind of the murmurings we've been getting after the World Cup. But I would have been surprised if you told me that Pochettino would still be the USMNT head coach before the World Cup, because I always thought this was just going to be a 2-year thing where he wanted to have a World Cup on home soil. Mauricio Pochettino is a huge name in world soccer. He's coached Chelsea, PSG, Tottenham. He could get a lot of jobs. He's going to be offered a lot of jobs probably during this cycle. That's something that we're going to have to watch. It's going to be a little bit annoying to monitor that kind of reporting and discourse and rumors. But I mean, this is, I think a home run. You never know what's going to happen. It's hard to coach a national team. It's not all about the coach, but I think he has the perfect mix of tactical acumen and getting through to players, that motivational voice. It seems like he really took to this specific group of players and some of the U.S. Uh, soccer customs that we got to see during the World Cup. So I'm super excited. I think at the very least, it's going to be exciting to have him through what is likely going to be a 2028 Copa America on home soil. I think that was probably another, um, you know, pull factor for him to return to this job.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was obviously excited last week. I really started to believe that it would happen. I think we had the conversation during the group stage where I kind of felt like, at first I remember saying there's no way he comes back, and then after the third or the second game, really, I was like, maybe he will. And I think there's a few reasons. One, I think club soccer is a little bit different than it was even 10 years ago, in that the financial restrictions within each league I feel like are a little bit more enforced than they were. So I think there's more quote unquote top managers to top jobs available. I mean, if you look at this past cycle post World Cup, historically after the World Cup is when teams may hire a new manager because they're waiting to see, if there are any managers available from the World Cup, or what their rosters might be in flux, and so on. That didn't really happen this time. Tuchel staying on at England, now Pochettino staying on here. What jobs were available this cycle? Only Manchester City, really, and early on Manchester, or top level jobs, I should say, and only Manchester City. And they decided to hire Maresca a while ago. So, I do think it's a little bit of a different environment. Obviously, it's possible that Pochettino leaves at any time. I think I saw in some of the reporting that both sides are protected if one of them decides to get out of the agreement early. I don't know what that means. I'm assuming some sort of financial compensation either way, or Pochettino, if he decides to leave, will have to pay back the rest of his contract or whatever. But that being said, I think it's really exciting. I think there were some really positive signs from Mauricio Pochettino and from this team. Obviously, the record is not too flattering. People point to the Belgium game. I don't know how much. I don't think that was really Pochettino's fault. But the truth is, he had us playing the best we've ever played at a World Cup. And I think that means something. Even though the competition is maybe weaker than we played in the past, the type of soccer we were playing was exciting, and you could see real growth there. And to inject that kind of philosophy through all levels of U.S. soccer, I think that could be really beneficial for us going forward, and having that continuity for the next 4 years, hopefully, I think will be really beneficial for this particular team going into 2030. I also think it's a big deal on the dual nats front. I think playing for Mauricio Pochettino is enticing, and there's players like Noah Kai Banks, and other dual nationals who could want to play for Pochettino now that he's the manager of the U.S. So it's exciting. I mean, I think it's something to really grow on. Obviously, next year we have the Gold Cup. We'll see what types of players are there. But it's a pretty packed cycle. We have two nations leagues in 27 and 29. We have the Gold Cup in 27 and 29, and we most likely have the Copa America in 28, and then of course the World Cup in 2030. So, yeah, I mean, what do you make of Pochettino's overall performance? Do you think, from a U.S. perspective, this was the right decision?
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely think this was the right decision. I think he got most everything right tactically at the World Cup, at least as about as much as you can expect over a 5-game sample. And I think the current roster pool fits very well with Pochettino's principles: the high pressing, the possession sequences. Alex Freeman in that center back role in possession, and then a right back role out of the press. I think he's just perfect. And he's a young player too, and he's already gotten so much better the last couple of years. He's gonna be, I think, a mainstay of this team for a long time, and I see him starting at that 2030 World Cup, especially if Pochettino's still in charge. Which I hate having to even say that because he signed the contract, he should be there for the World Cup, but I am just a little bit wary. But yeah, I think that was absolutely the right decision. I think I've never really believed in the kind of conventional wisdom that like a coach for the U.S. men's national team should only be around for one cycle. I mean, he was only around for half a cycle, so that wouldn't even really apply, even if you believe that kind of thinking. But I think this was definitely the right thing to do. I think he's learned about the player pool. He's learned about kind of the rigors of CONCACAF play, and that it's not always going to be easy. We're going to be outnumbered in our own stadium sometimes. And then there's going to be that extra extrinsic motivation from playing real games and with not only the Copa America, but qualifying this team for our first qualification cycle since 2022. So that's going to be exciting too.
Yeah, we don't quite know what qualification is going to look like now with potentially a 64-team World Cup on the horizon. So we'll see what that looks like. But I do want to read some of Pochettino's quote from after signing this contract. He said, "Working together with U.S. Soccer over the past 2 years, it has become clear to us that there's a tremendous potential to make the men's national team program even stronger. The passion we experienced from the fans throughout the World Cup only strengthened our belief in what is possible here." And I do think, when I turned to you and said, is it possible that he stays? What was during Country Roads, when we were in that stadium in Seattle, and Country Roads was playing, and he was walking around with the players, and it just felt like we were building to something bigger. I also think this is really important in terms of the growth of the men's national team, to have the same manager for the next 4 years for the casual fan. I think also, it gives the casual fan a little bit more familiarity with the team. When they turn on to watch the next U.S. men's national team game, we'll have the same manager.
Especially because the roster is going to be more in flux, for your typical friendly break, like in September.
Sure.
So I think it's going to be nice for fans to, maybe they're not going to recognize a lot of the players, but they'll at least have that Pochettino still there.
Sure. What are some things that you think Pochettino could do better in this cycle? I mean, I think he got goalkeeper wrong. The choices weren't great, obviously, between Matt Freese, Matt Turner. I mean, those are really the only two viable options. There is another Japanese American that has not committed to either national team yet that I think would be that's playing in the Netherlands, I believe. I think would be pretty cool to grab him. But aside from goalkeeper, is there anything that you would like to see Pochettino improve on in this cycle?
I think we do need some different attacking looks. We need to get more creative players into camp, into rosters, and not be so reliant on Christian Pulisic as his form is starting to dip for both club and country, as his issues are coming back into play again. I think, he's going to be, 31 years old, I think, at the next World Cup. Still, obviously, capable of performing and being a star for us, but we do need other options to go to, because he was, even besides the injury, probably one of the more disappointing players at the 2026 World Cup. So I think that would be great. I think developing maybe different midfield looks could be really nice. Getting Tessman into the team to see what he looks like with his physical presence. But developing some of these young guys like Xavier Gozo. Maybe seeing if Diego Luna can bring anything back into the team. Obviously, the recruitment of the dual nationals, he didn't have to do a whole lot in the 2 years he was there for that. So yes, if you can get Noah Kai Banks to play for the U.S., that's a huge win in this cycle, and that he's certainly a big part of that decision making for Banks, especially since Pochettino, like you said, has that increased role with the whole federation now.
And Noah Kai Banks is a young center back who plays for Augsburg in the Bundesliga. And for those of you who might are not necessarily familiar with how international soccer is, once you play a competitive match for a nation, you essentially cannot play for a different nation. Now you can play in friendlies and switch. There have been some new rules, I think, the last couple of years where they give you a little bit more leeway with competitive matches. But essentially, if you're on a roster for like a Gold Cup or a World Cup, you're not going to be allowed to switch to a different country. So Noah Kai Banks is eligible for Germany and the U.S. You just mentioned Xavier Gozo. He just got citizenship this past weekend for the Ivory Coast, for Cote d'Ivoire. So he's also someone who is an MLS product. He played for the U.S. youth national teams, but he's also a dual national. And just the nature of U.S. soccer, we have so many dual nationals. So that's or even polynationals that we want to keep in our system. But yeah, I agree with you. I think like obviously incorporating some of this young talent. I think there's the youth World Cups that are coming up as well that we can Pochettino's staff should be heavily involved with. There's some really exciting young players like Julian Hall, Xavier Gozo that you mentioned, Mathis Albert, I don't know how to pronounce it, who plays for Borussia Dortmund.
Adrian Mehmeti for Red Bulls. He's a dual national as well, technically eligible for Albania, but we hope he chooses the U.S. He could be defensive midfielder of the future.
Is it Albania? I thought it was Morocco.
It's Albania.
Okay. Well, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, he's also a really good player. And I think that's just the next evolution. How are we going to evolve over the next few years in the way we look? Like you said, different looks, I think, are going to be really important. We kind of settled into this 5-3-2, 5-2. I mean, 5-3-2, I guess, system. But how is that what it's going to be going forward? That's for Mauricio Pochettino to figure out. So
yeah, I think like you said, goalkeeper obviously a huge question mark, and there's only so much you can do, I guess, as a national team manager. But I think we know now Matt Freese isn't it. I don't think we'd like it for Matt Turner to be the starting keeper either necessarily at the next two tournaments, even though he is, I think a talented shot stopper in his own right, but it's not quite, with the evolution of U.S. soccer, he's not quite where we want to be at. But the other big position group that we started to see the failings of is center back, and like you said, I mean, like you kind of alluded to, Noah Kai Banks is going to be a big swing factor there. Tim Ream obviously will be too old to even, I think, play at the Copa America in 2 years. So that's going to be something he's going to need to get right as well. I think those are the two biggest position groups going into 2028.
Thank you so much for listening to this abbreviated version of the Soccer Brothers podcast. If you did enjoy, please make sure you leave a like and follow us wherever you're listening to this on. You can also email us your questions and comments at soccerbrotherspodcast@gmail.com. We're going to be launching our YouTube channel and our TikTok pretty soon, so be on the lookout for that. With that, we'll be out of here, and we'll see you guys next time on the Soccer Brothers podcast.